Thank you for joining me on the podcast. Korn Chatikavanij, who is the leader of Pattana Party, which will be contesting the elections that's upcoming. You are number
14.
14 on the ballot.
And the election date is?
The 14th.
The 14th. There
Wow.
you
Okay, that's a lucky break for you guys.
go. No, I picked that number myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first question I have to ask you is really important, and it actually might alienate a lot of your voters, but I think it's something that they really want to know, and
All
it's
right.
something that I know that you feel really strongly about.
Okay.
Why does Manchester United suck?
They don't suck. It's just that Leeds is better.
Okay, so you don't hate Manchester United
I don't. No.
as a Leeds fan.
No. At the moment,
Then you're not a very good Leeds fan.
No. We're not in the business of hate. We're just in the business of loyalty against all odds. Once again, we are struggling to remain in the Premier League.
Do you think you're going down this season?
It's tight. I have to admit, it's tight. If we survive, it will be through the skin of our teeth, as it were. Yeah.
Should you have kept?
Rafinha?
Yeah.
Well, we all wish we did, but I don't think we had a choice. I think he wanted to move on. He paid his dues. He did a great job for us. Played with his heart.
So how does a Thai kid support Leeds and not any of the other big teams?
By pure accident. I was actually born in Chelsea,
Okay.
so I should be supporting Chelsea. Life would be a lot easier, but
Not this season.
No, that's true. That was never on the cards. When I was 9 years old, I turned on the TV, and the FA Cup final was on.
Yeah.
Leeds against Sunderland. Leeds was at the peak of their that sort of dominancy during the 70s. So that was 1973.
It's 2 years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago. And Leeds lost that match to second division Sunderland by 1-0. And I felt so bad for them. Ever since then, I was hooked.
You felt bad for them, so you started supporting the team. That's a unique thing. But like you said, you spent a lot of time in the UK growing up when you were a kid. You went to boarding school there, and then you did your university there.
And I worked there after university for about 2.5 years.
So my question to you then, so that the audience gets to know you a little better, is why a kid that has so much ties to the UK wanted to come back and get into politics in Thailand?
You have to separate the two questions.
Okay.
I wanted to come back because at that time I was in finance.
Yeah.
Thailand was beginning its major boom period of the 80s.
Yeah.
And I saw that coming. Great opportunity. There was nowhere else in the world that offered us that kind of opportunity.
So what year did you come back?
1988.
88.
Yeah, 88. So I went to the UK in 1976.
Yeah.
Came back in 1988. Started up my own brokerage company, investment banking company. And enjoyed the boom period of the Thai economy at that time. No thought of entering politics at all.
Yeah.
Even though I did do PPE at Oxford. And
So
my
there
classmate
was that
a-
inkling in the back of your mind. You did a PPE. There was some,
No, I did PPE because I like economics.
Okay.
And,
Not the political side of things.
Not at all. And there was no pure economic course at Oxford. If you want to do economics, it had to be politics, philosophy, and economics. So I did that mostly because I want to do economics. And entered the financial industry in a very exciting period for that sector, not only in London, but in the world as a whole. The UK was going through its so-called Big Bang, when the financial industry was liberalized and forced to compete. And so a lot of interesting changes that was taking place. And coincidentally, 1986, which was my first full year working life, was the year that in Thailand, GDP contribution of the industrial sector overtook the contribution of the agricultural sector for the first time. And so that was a watershed moment. And for me, what that meant was there's going to be a lot of demand for capital. And if there's going to be a lot of demand for capital for industrial development, then capital market had to grow. And that was the basis for my decision to come back.
So you saw an opportunity.
I saw a trend. and I thought I'd write it.
When you first came back, did you feel, I mean, you spent a lot of your adolescence and your childhood and your university years growing up in the UK. Did you feel a disconnect to Thailand? Was there a cultural barrier that you had to reintegrate to yourself?
We had a very close-knit family.
Yeah.
And my parents were both civil servants. So
what did they do?
My father was a civil servant in the Ministry of Finance. My mother was a university lecturer at Chulalongkorn. So I grew up in a kind of typical Thai civil service family. So my roots were very much tied to here. Having said that, there were thoughts at the time of potentially having a different life in a different place.
If there was a flip of the dice and then you ended up in the UK, there was a path and avenue for you where you never came back.
There was definitely, because straight out of Oxford, I went into the City of London, which is the term used for the financial center, and had a really great career there. I mean, it was a great start. I was 21 years old when I entered that industry. As I said, it was a booming industry at the time. Asia was about to emerge, and I was pretty much the only Asian in London, so I was given a lot more responsibility than a 21, 22-year-old would normally have. I could have chosen to stay, yeah.
So what was the inkling that brought you? Was there any like homesickness? Was it the food? Was it the people?
I was always going to come back to Thailand.
You think so?
Yeah, I was always going to come back to Thailand. Family, also sense of duty even. Sentimental ties. At the end of the day, even having been in the UK since I was young, one always felt a little bit like a second-class citizen in a country that wasn't quite your own.
Yeah.
I loved life there, enjoyed my time there, and was never badly treated by the locals. I was too big for them to do that. But at the end of the day, you kind of felt it wasn't your country,
sure.
and Thailand was. Plus, as I said earlier, the fact that no other country in the world offered youngsters like us during that time greater opportunity than Thailand did at that time. Not something you can say about today.
Well, that's why the kids are on the street.
And that's why I'm in politics.
And that's why you're in politics. Well, let's get into that. So when did you decide to enter politics and why?
When I was about 39 years old.
Okay. This was what year?
2004, 2003,
okay. So
late 2003.
The end of Thaksin 1, the beginnings of Thaksin 2.
Correct,
yeah.
Correct. Basically, I'd come back when I was 23. I started up the business straight away. I was able to exit my business by selling the entire company to JP Morgan when I was 35. I was then asked by JP Morgan to run that business in Thailand, which I did for about 5 years. I'd had my fill, really, of the financial sector. I was lucky enough to be able to build a business and build a nest egg, had enough deposit in the bank to feel that I could look after my family.
It might have been more had you stayed in the city.
No. Definitely the opportunity to come back and start up your own business here and then sell to a global firm was an opportunity that I could not have had
in London
had I stayed on in London.
Okay.
And JP Morgan paid me really well during my 5-year period of being their local chair.
Yeah.
But enough was enough. I kind of felt I wasn't growing. I kind of felt that I'd given everything that I had to that firm and to the industry, and I wanted to use that experience basically to pay something back to society.
You had a nest egg, you had a family, you could have done anything. You could have bought a private island and hunted people, but why politics of all things?
I needed to do something, not least because I felt lucky.
Yeah.
And I felt I had this great opportunity. I wanted to pay something back. I initially wanted to follow the footsteps of my parents, become civil servants. So I always had that inner drive towards public service of some kind.
Yeah.
But of course, by the time I was 39, by the time I was 40, civil service wasn't an option.
Sure.
And
the pay would have been a lot less.
Yeah, well, pay in politics is not great either.
Yeah.
But so I decided the best way of using the experience I've had and giving something back was through politics, better or worse. and a general election was upcoming.
Yeah.
The opportunity to run for office was there. I'd never really previously seriously thought about doing so. It was very much spur of the moment decision. Okay, let's go, let's do it.
And why the Democrat Party?
Good question. I actually had many more connections at the Thai Party, as it was known at that time, through the fact that I was in business.
Yeah.
Thaksin was my client,
Okay.
at least. But I'm very keen on competition. I still talk about that issue a lot today.
Yeah.
The competition needs to be fair, and I'm a strong believer that the best way of protecting the interests of the population, especially as consumers, is through free and fair competition.
Yeah.
Whenever you have competition, that's better than having independent regulators even, in looking after, making sure that goods are of high quality, goods are fairly priced, and so on and so forth. So competition is important.
The market regulates itself.
And I think that translated into my view about politics as well. Thai at that time was all-encompassing, very powerful. And the Democrat Party was at its low point. We thought it was going to be the lowest that it was going to get.
No, I think currently it's at its lowest, maybe.
At that time, it wasn't competitive. It was obvious in that upcoming election that the Democrat Party was going to become an opposition party again. And I looked at the Democrat Party and I thought, well, you can't have a two-party system with one party significantly weaker than the other. That's not great for the country. That's just the logical thought that I had. Plus the fact that the Democrat Party was full of lawyers and academics, very few people with business experience in the party, which was the opposite to Thai, stuffed full of people with business experience. So I kind of thought that with my financial sector experience, business experience, I could do more for the Democrat Party than I could for the Thai Party. I actually spoke to both and made my decision.
And lost really badly in that first election.
I won.
I'm just saying the party lost really badly in that first election.
As it was expected to do.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my concern, really. I kind of felt that the least I could do was make sure that the party in opposition could do its job properly in opposition, sufficiently to basically provide some kind of check and balance to the system. And politics at that time wasn't as toxic as it is today. So the fact that I made a decision to join the Democrat Party, surprised my friends in Thai, but it wasn't a toxic decision. It didn't make them my enemy straight away, nor me their enemy.
Which is probably the way politics should be, rather than...
It should be. It should be competitive.
Yeah.
But it should be
respectful,
toxic.
right?
Respectful.
And you were a constituency candidate?
I was. And that was another decision I had to make. Because usually, if you were, chair of a bank or come from a senior sort of corporate position, one would usually expect to run in an election, if at all, on the party list. But I kind of felt, I thought opposite again. I kind of felt that because I spent all my working life in finance, most of my customers were basically, by definition, wealthy individuals.
Yeah.
If I wanted to serve the country, serve the people, I needed to basically learn a lot more about the ways of life of the majority of my countrymen. And the best way of doing that was not through being on the party list. The best way of doing that was through walking the streets, begging for votes, and speaking with the
what was your
general public. Yeah, Yanawa.
And you won your first contest.
I won. I think there was something like 36 constituencies in Bangkok in that election. Democrat Party won 4 of them. Thai won pretty much all the rest, and I won 1 of the 4. Yeah.
I think the Democrat Party might be lucky to get 4 this time around.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Well, do you ever feel like because you joined them at such an early stage in your political career, that's still you obviously have your own party now. You've allied yourself with another older party. But do you ever feel that the Democrats are still your party in the back of your mind? That this is there's some loyalty and on in there?
Loyalty might be the wrong word, but sentimental attachment, for sure. 16 years.
Yeah.
And I still feel sentimentally attached to JF Thanapom and JP Morgan. Because a significant part of your life spent there. A lot of friends, a lot of very interesting moments. And I was, after all, Minister of Finance for the Democrat government.
Yeah.
So the sentimental ties were there, and I learned a lot from them.
Right. So there are sentimental ties. So why did you decide to leave?
It was no longer the party that I could identify with.
Can you expand on that?
Well, it's my opinion. So
Sure. And your opinion is strong enough that you left.
I felt very strongly that the party needed a new direction.
Yeah.
Need to modernize in their thinking. Need to be less conservative in both their approach towards policy and in the way they do things.
Sure.
And I presented what I believe the party needed to the party in leadership contest. They decided they wanted a different guy with a different strategy.
Yeah.
And that was fair enough. That's the party's decision to make. But it was no longer the party for me.
Okay. And did you were there long enough to vote for the prime minister. Was the going back on the promise by the party that they made to their constituents a factor in that at all?
Well,
because just to recap,
there's a lot of technical debate about whether it was a party position in the first place.
Right.
Because strictly speaking, it wasn't.
It was made by the party leader Kun who said he would not join Kun Prayut and resigned because of it.
Correct. And I think the decision as an MP in Parliament that day was a difficult one for us, not least because the person we wanted to be Prime Minister, the person we competed in the election to be Prime Minister was Kun Abhisit.
Yeah.
It wasn't Kun Prayut and it wasn't Kun Thanathorn. So we were left with a choice of two people, neither of whom we wanted as Prime Minister, but we had to do our job as a Member of Parliament in choosing somebody to run the country. So the basis that I used to make that decision was quite a straightforward one at the end of the day.
Should you have resigned before that vote?
No, I felt I had to do the job.
Okay.
I didn't want to shirk on the responsibility. I could even have voted to abstain.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt, again, that would be shirking my responsibility. The people have spoken, and the basis I used to make my decision was the fact that Kun Prayut's party won significantly more votes than Kun Thanathorn's party. I think by about 2 million votes. And so democratic principle of majority rule decided that the person we should vote for was Kun Prayut.
I mean, there's more technicalities than just that, but let's.
There isn't really. When you narrow it down.
I mean, there were the Pheu Thai candidates, but they weren't forwarded, right?
They didn't forward that?
They didn't forward them.
That would have made my decision easier.
Would you have voted for the Pheu Thai candidates?
Maybe. Had they presented their candidate. They had 3 candidates.
They had 3 candidates.
And they decided...
And they were the largest party.
They were the largest party. Yeah. They decided not to submit any of their candidates, which is a question I don't have an answer for. I never asked them.
I'm not asking, you don't have to tell me what the mindset of Pheu Thai is. Who knows what their leader's thinking. But so given everything that's happened in the, let's say, between that time and now, so between 2019 and 2022.
Right.
And even factoring in since the coup in 2014, how would you rate Kun Prayut's premiership?
Well, big disappointment, I think. It's a loss of opportunity.
In what regard? In which areas?
There's so many. Well, especially when you look back to his first 4 years, when he had absolute power.
Yeah.
There were so many things that one could do, you could do, I could do, with absolute power.
Sure.
And he didn't do pretty much any of it. You look at Thailand's situation today. Let's just look at the political situation.
Sure.
And you ask the question, is politics today better or worse than it was, 2014?
2014.
It's significantly worse. And a lot of that, the blame has to be put to him, and particularly with the Pang Pracharat government. There's so much more vote buying that is going on in politics. Money talks so much louder in politics than it did before.
Okay.
We haven't had any significant reform on major issues that there was consensus in society that needed reform, whether it's police reform, whether it's judiciary reform, whether it's educational reform, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to pinpoint any specific issue in which he had sort of positively surprised us in terms of his achievements.
I mean, economically, we're probably worse off. Politically, we're definitely worse off. But he's still campaigning on his achievements, which I find very surprising. One of the major things that he's campaigning on is his response to COVID, which he says he did a really great job. How do you think he did there?
Well, Thailand, to be fair, I think did relatively well with COVID. We had a sort of a national health structure.
A very robust one.
Which was robust,
Yeah.
Very much down at the grassroots levels. And so I think we were able to look after our people very well relative to other countries. Of course, just like many other countries, it was a bit shambolic at first with regards to access to vaccines and meds and so on and so forth.
Do you put that on the government?
Well, they were in charge, they were responsible, but I think to be fair, you look at other countries, even in the United States or Europe, it was equally, if not more shambolic in many countries. I mean, everybody was working in a vacuum, working in unknown space, and so it was difficult. But overall, not least, I think society reacted well. It wasn't just the government, it wasn't just the medical services, but society as a whole reacted well in coming together to try to overcome that particular crisis. And okay, specifically with regards to government action other than on the medical side,
Yeah.
I have to say also that it was an easy decision to make. Nevertheless, they made the decision to provide financial support to the broad population.
Affected businesses and people.
Yeah, and that was done effectively. What was not done effectively was government financial support to small businesses. And I think that pretty much highlights some of the structural problems that we had, which meant that it was very difficult for small businesses to access the cheap loans and other financial support that the government had to offer.
Okay. So let's say that you do very well in the next election, and somehow you find yourself prime minister. What are the major issues that you wish to tackle? What are your first 4 stops as prime minister?
Well, I go back to what I said has been the major
Structural issues.
driving force in the way I approach
Sure.
both business life and political life, which is I want to create opportunity, and that means opportunity to compete fairly.
Okay.
I believe that people can be born into rich households, poor households, but in a good society, everyone should be able to feel that they can improve the quality of their lives and basically to enhance their economic and living standard statuses. And that's what I'll be aiming at. And the main problem right now that we have in Thai society and in Thai economy is excessive monopolistic control over businesses and industries, which is, I think, very much limiting the ability for individuals and small firms to compete. So we need to attack that. And it's a root cause also for the high cost of living that Thais have.
You're talking about Pattana.
Not just Pattana,
Okay.
but it's the entire last year when the country was struggling with high fuel prices.
Yeah.
We highlighted the fact that one of the main reasons that fuel prices in Thailand was higher than it needed to be was a structural issue. It was the fact that we were allowing local refiners to get away with pricing their services, i.e. refining crude oil, far too high relative to their actual and real costs.
So no price control for refineries.
It was no competition, and the fact that government regulation and the powers that be allowed the local refiners to price their products in that way was verging on criminal. It meant that Thais were paying 7 baht, 8 baht
So how
per
would you
litre
fix,
higher
how would you fix something like that?
than needed. What?
How would you fix something like that then?
Oh, government policy. I mean, all you had to do through the Ministry of Energy was to redefine the game in terms of how refiners are allowed to price their services, their refinery services.
So you would introduce like a cap? Is it?
I would use a different way.
Yeah. Because I mean that would be an artificial limit on.
It is at the moment. It is at the moment artificial.
Yeah.
They're basing refinery costs on refinery costs in Singapore, which has nothing to do with
the time.
with
Yeah.
their cost base here in Thailand.
Sure.
So we need to make it genuinely competitive and genuinely reflect market reality.
And you think so like if I'm understanding correctly, you wouldn't be so much for introducing artificial caps and government limitations, but more introducing competition that would bring prices down.
I believe in market mechanism, but it needs to be free and fair.
Okay.
And I strongly believe that in order for us to have free and fair market
Yeah.
Mechanism, government needs to intervene to make it so.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And you're not going to have that. The reason why we're in politics, the reason why we're at Pattana, the reason why we're in a relatively small party is because these monopolistic advantages are secured through political power. And the very close relationship, symbiotic relationship between political power and
big businesses
and big business monopoly
Yeah.
is the major hindrance to Thailand's development and to the improvement of livelihoods for local Thais.
As a small business owner myself, and having known a lot of people working within the startup field, I think one of the major issues also economically for us trying to be entrepreneurs is access to capital in the market.
Exactly.
There's a big problem. How would you go about fixing that?
Again, competition. The fact is, we have a lot of banks, 15 active commercial banks, but no true competition, and that competition is going to come through technology. The fact that Apple is now challenging the major banks as a deposit taker is a clear signal of things to come. The fact that Grab is now able to provide cheap loans to restaurants
or even things like
within their community
and small businesses like that.
Is competition. When I was finance minister, I tried to increase competition in the banking space by increasing the number of banks.
Yeah.
That didn't really work because you issued new licenses, you had new banks come into the game, and then the first thing that happened is that they begin to collude with
the other banks, the existing banks.
But also the ability for them to provide a different kind of service was limited and it was limited by technology. But now, with the possibility of digital banking, the availability of data, which allows financial institutions and non-financial institutions to assess risk very accurately, means that new players can compete. And new players don't need to build brick and mortar support systems through bank branches.
Everything's digitized, right?
And so theoretically, the cost of entry, therefore, is lower. And I think that is what is going to improve access to cheap financing, both for the individuals and for small firms like yours.
You really think it would free up a lot of capital for us?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at we were talking about COVID and the challenges that SMEs had in accessing cheap loans that the Bank of Thailand was trying to provide for them. If you look at the channels in which that provision was made, the Bank of Thailand needed to rely on existing banking system. So basically, they said that here's 500 billion baht of cheap loans that you can access, and you have to access it through the commercial banks.
Yeah.
But that itself is, I immediately saw that this wasn't going to work because the commercial banks
Yeah, but the BOT can't give out loans, right? So
There was no other way for them to do it directly. And well, they could have used the state-owned financial institutions, but they chose not to. So there was a systematic bottleneck, which meant that small firms who weren't customers of these commercial banks in the first place had no way of accessing those cheap loans. And so if you were to develop a different channel through technology, through digital banking, then I think access would be a lot easier and the cost of financing would be a lot lower.
Okay. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Just two more hard questions and then we'll get to the fun stuff. Can you reflect on one policy that you're really proud of when you're in government? That you say, this is, if I had to end my political career tomorrow, at least I did this.
Right.
First question. Second question is, one thing that you did in politics where you said, if I could go back in time, I'd probably try to change that. That's not something I'm particularly super proud of. You can start with whichever, the positive or the negative, you pick.
Let's go with the positive.
Okay, let's go with the positive.
Positive, when I was Minister of Finance, 2 or 3 things I did during that crisis. The
2008 crisis,
I think the big picture was the fact that I was able to help the Thai economy recover so quickly. It's something I'm proud of. But if you look at specific policies, I have to pick the policy of helping to refinance about 500,000 people from loan sharks to becoming customers of state-owned financial institutions, thereby helping reducing their interest burden from about 20% per month to about 1% per month. And that changed people's lives.
Yeah.
And I have to say that that's something that I was particularly pleased with.
Proud of.
Pleased with.
Okay. And the negative?
Negative. I should have fought harder during the internal party debate.
In the Democrat Party?
In the Democrat Party, back in 2557. 2014.
Yeah.
To prevent the party from boycotting the general election of that year.
That was a mistake, you think, that the party boycotted it and it led to the
Yeah, I didn't agree with it.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt, even now,
that
I could have fought harder to prevent it. In my time with the Democrat Party, we boycotted the election twice.
Yeah.
Very furious internal debate leading up to both decisions.
Yeah.
I was on record of not being in agreement both times. But again, I kind of felt I could have done more.
And you think if you had not boycotted the election in 2014, there would have been no coup?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Absolutely.
You don't think Khun Prayut would have did whatever he needed to do to make a coup happen regardless of your participation?
I think it would have, no, the election was what, February?
Yeah.
Something like that?
And the coup was May.
And so the condition wasn't ripe at that time for a coup to take place.
I felt like the coup was being planned, 6 months before the election.
I'm not sure about that. Maybe as a contingency, but there was no obvious opportunity or justification for it to have taken place.
I don't think there's ever a real justification for a military coup. Just no matter what's going on, I feel you have to fix the problems through the mechanisms available in government.
Yeah, but they had a bigger excuse in May.
They had a bigger excuse, sure.
To do it than they did in February, and I think a general election in February would have entirely changed.
A contested one, not the whatever it was. The boycotts and the pickets.
And would have entirely changed the political landscape, and we'd be in a completely different situation today, I think politically, socially, economically.
I think that's a good note to end on for the heavy stuff. Let's ask some fun stuff. So I know that you're a huge Leeds fan, unfortunately. What other fandoms do you belong to?
Well, I've always been a big tennis fan.
Okay. Who's your favorite tennis player?
I don't have one right now. My
was
previous,
there one?
Well, it used to be Guillermo Vilas back in the days.
Okay.
Okay, he's Argentinian.
Yeah.
Back in the late 70s.
You're really dating yourself right
Yeah,
now.
late 70s. And then I had a bit of a lapse
Okay.
until Federer came along.
Oh, okay. You're a Federer guy.
Then I was a very keen Federer fan.
Okay.
And now I'm deciding between Rune, Tsitsipas, or one of the...
Not a
new
Paradon
youngsters.
fan?
Oh, big fan. I thought he was great.
Yeah.
Great for the country.
Yeah.
Love watching him. Great personality. Very good guy. I just saw a video clip of his little girl playing golf.
tennis. Oh, she's
Playing
playing
golf.
She's playing golf now.
Because Paradon actually is also a good golfer.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And but his little girl must be no more than 4 or 5 years old.
She hit a
Great
swing.
Great golf swing.
Wow.
Good DNA.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when your dad's an athlete, it helps, right?
No, it was a proud time to be a tennis fan because he was doing great things and he was a true personality on the world stage. Yeah. And he even brought all the top players to compete in the Thailand Open during his peak years. Which Federer won. And
conflicting interests there. We need better Thai athletes. I think the system. I mean, it's also a political issue, right? If we had a better Ministry of Tourism and Sport to sort of boost our amateur sports.
Money is a big issue.
In all sports. Yeah.
I'm a believer that we need to change the way culture, arts, soft power as a whole is financed. And one of the most obvious way of financing soft power is through the lottery, national lottery. And I don't think national lottery receipts should be used as tax money in the same way that
goes into the national budget.
Yeah, and now, do you know how much the government rakes in each year?
From the lottery?
And again, this has happened over the past 8 years.
Okay.
8 years ago, the government was only selling about 37 lotteries, 37 million lottery in per each round.
Yeah.
Now it's 100 million.
And where does that money go?
Well, it goes to the national kitty. And so the government is raking in about 50 billion baht a year from this. This is aside from the profits that the National Lottery Organization makes of about 6 billion.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money that actually I think could be earmarked for the development of sports. And when I talk about development of sports, I don't mean just of elite sports, but providing better facilities for
amateur sports. That's where it starts.
For the general public to have access to and more able to participate.
I'm less egalitarian on sports. I think it should be all invested in amateur and developmental sports, but that's fine. Soft power is an interesting issue. I think we can have a whole podcast about that because you know my background and how I feel about this government with its soft power output. Let's talk about let's talk about film actually. Any big fandoms? Any directors, actors that you actresses that you?
Well, I'm a big fan right now of the K series, I have to say.
Of K series?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's very surprising.
Really?
Yeah, I don't peg you as a K series
I must have
watcher.
now, since the beginning of COVID, and COVID started it.
Okay.
I must have now watched about 50 series.
What?
Yeah, seriously. I don't know how I find
I'm in
time.
film. I don't have that much time to watch that.
I don't know how I find time. It's because of technology. I could download it.
Yeah, you watch it on your phone.
You know, as a politician, you'd be amazed how much time I spend in the car.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
traveling
plane, or,
between provinces, even within a province. So it's a good way of sort of relaxing a little bit.
Any favorites? K series?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, the very first one was a soppy rom-com.
Which was Crash
Crash
Landing.
Landing on
Oh
You.
God. Okay.
Which I have to say
is very well done.
not only very well done. I have to admit also that I must have seen it about 10 times.
What?
Yeah. So I've watched 50 series, some of which I've seen 10 times.
You have way too much. I don't. What?
But actually, but not from start to finish.
Sure.
Sometimes, literally, I want to de-stress.
Yeah. So you watched your favorite episode of Crash Landing.
I just turn on. You know what my favorite episode is?
Which one?
The North Koreans were the.
No, it's because there's a political angle. That's why.
No. The North Koreans were in a chicken and beer restaurant.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And on TV, a football match was going on.
Yeah.
And it was a match between Japan and South Korea.
Yeah.
And at first, their leader was saying, what are you getting excited about? It's a South Korean play.
Yeah.
And he said, no, but they're playing the Japanese. and then they all turned to support the match. And I kind of felt that was a nice touch.
Okay. So are there any more less rom-com-y Korean series that you enjoy?
Well, right now I'm watching, what's the name of the series? Very political.
Queenmaker.
Queenmaker
is excellent.
Yeah.
Queenmaker's excellent.
But there are other very good politics-based themes made by the Koreans. Chief of Staff was great.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Glory was really good.
Glory was good. Yeah. And every time I watch these series, I'm thinking, gosh, I wish that we have so much better potential content for great series.
Can I?
I mean, I also watch the period series.
Oh, like
the historical ones,
like Kingdom.
Emperor Key, which is Empress Key, which is one of the best.
Their films are better than their series, and that's really something.
I've seen, I watched some of their films as well.
I think they make the best films around. Let me rant for a second. You say that Thailand should be at that level, or has the potential the potential to be at that level. We have the stories. We have the stories.
But our history is so much more nuanced, and equally rich, at least compared to the Korean history.
But the Koreans do something better than us. Is that their government actively supports young filmmakers, actively passes grants and awards and competitions.
We should have our own cocktail.
Yeah.
And again, that could easily be financed by the lottery.
And everyone knows that angle, that our government doesn't do well to support the film industry here. But what's even more pressing for the Korean film industry is that there's competition, which goes back to your thing. There's a lot of players in the field trying to make good series. In Thailand, our film industry is dominated by 4 players, and everything is within that 4 players. So independent filmmakers have no access to capital or investment, and they have very little chance of distribution when competing with those 4 things. And so we make the same things over and over again with no opportunity to travel. So it's.
I hear you.
It's a competition issue. It's all your issues rolled into one sector.
No. There's something waiting to happen. It's something waiting to happen because I have no doubt of the creativity of Thais.
Yeah.
As I said, the potential content is there, the stories are there. It's just waiting for everything to come together.
All right.
And maybe that's government money.
Yeah. To my audience, that means you go watch my films when they come out.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Really had a good time, and good luck in the upcoming election. Number 14.
Number 14 on the 14th of May.
On the 14th of May.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Korn.